Hi, and welcome back to Free for All Friday on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Congenial, convivial, amiable, and desperate, as always, for content. Number to call, it's Free for All Friday. We will talk about anything you want. We are going to get to this NSA stuff. It's now demonstrated that they can tap people's stuff. They can monitor stuff without a warrant, unlike what they've been telling us. We're going to talk about immigration, what a fraud this border security thing is. We're going to talk about Obamacare and how the whole thing is simply a scam set up to register low information, low income voters for the Democratic Party. We're going to get to all of that. 888-589-8840 is the number to call, 888-589-8840. And I was not kidding you about that sheep-eating plant in the UK. Here is the story from The Blaze. A rare and massive plant is set to bloom in the United Kingdom, and it preys on animals as large as sheep. Native to South America, the Puya chilensis grows up to 10 feet tall and produces large spikes of neon bright flowers. So a sheep apparently gets too close to that. They get trapped in the spikes, won't let them go. They die, they starve to death, they decay, and it becomes instant plant food so they can just keep right on growing. Now, thankfully, it says the Puya chilensis will bloom in a greenhouse carefully controlled by the Royal Horticulture Society. It was planted 15 years ago, but this is the first time it will bloom. So they've had it there for 15 years. They've been fertilizing it. They've been watering it. It's been in this greenhouse. And finally now it is starting to bloom. Horticulturist Kara Smith says, "I'm pleased that we finally coaxed our Puya chilensis into flower." And of course, they allow people to come and tour their horticulture center, the greenhouse. The only word is, parents, keep your children away from the Puya chilensis before they themselves turn into plant food. Now, one quick thing. I want to play a couple of sound bites from my interview on Fox News today about AFA's position on the Boy Scouts. We got two sound bites. I was on with Lauren Green from about noon our time, noon Central, about 12:10. If we can get the video clip of that, once that gets posted up on Fox News, we'll give you the link to that. An interesting little story here about a nurse who was a palliative care nurse. In other words, she was taking care of patients at the very end of their lives. You know, and it's fascinating to think about the things that we regret. And what she did is she talked to these patients. She took care of them in the last 12 weeks of their lives. So she was with a lot of them on their final day. And she would ask them if they had any regrets looking back on their lives. What would your biggest regret be? What is your biggest regret? And she's written an entire book on this, the top 5 regrets of the dying. So this is pretty telling stuff, because these are people looking back on an entire life. These typically are senior citizens, so they've lived a long, full life, and they're looking back and said, man, if I had a do-over, this is what I would do differently. Now, here are, and some of these are pretty striking. You might want to ask yourself, I'll just run through these briefly, and maybe we can take some phone calls on this, about this whole issue of regret and living a life that you can live without regret. The top regret is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. In other words, people realize, look, I compromised my principles. I compromised my integrity. I didn't pursue the dreams and visions that were in my heart. I let other people dictate those things to me. I let the expectations and the demands that other people had of me dictate the choices I made, instead of following the things that were really deep in my heart and staying true to my deepest principles. So they got to the end of their lives. They realized, they just didn't always at least have the courage to live a life that was true to themselves. Here's number 2, the second biggest regret. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And she said this came from every male patient that she nursed. They missed their children's youth and their partner's companionship. All of the men I nursed deeply regretted spending so much of their lives on the treadmill of a work existence. Well, young dads and husbands, I'm telling you right now, this is a mistake that you can avoid. You can avoid making this mistake, because she says, look, every male patient that she took care of regretted that they had not spent more time with their children and with their family, and that they had worked more than they should have, more than they really needed to. I'm not talking about slacking at work. We're not talking about that. We're talking about working a hard, full day, giving your employee the best that you have to give, but protecting your family. Howard Hendricks is a professor of mine at Dallas Seminary, and he said, I've talked to a lot of guys toward the end of their lives, and he said, I've never had one say to me, my only regret is that I didn't spend more time at the office. Here is regret number 4. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. This is an interesting one. She said, often they would not truly realize the full benefits of old friends until their dying weeks, and it was not always possible to track them down. Many had become so caught up in their own lives that they had let golden friendships slip by over the years. There were many deep regrets about not giving friendships the time and effort that they deserve. So that's interesting. Those are just three of the 5. Courage to live a life true to themselves, wishing they hadn't worked so hard, and wishing they had stayed in touch with their friends. So I think some kind of sobering words there, worth pondering and worth reflecting on right there. Now let's play those sound bites real quickly. This is with my conversation with Laura Green, talking with her about the AFA and our recommendation that families that have sons in Scouts, pull them out of there, get out of the scouting organization. They have embraced the homosexual agenda. They've compromised their values as an organization. This is not a safe place for your son any longer. And we've also recommended that churches cancel their sponsorship, terminate their sponsorship arrangement with the Boy Scouts. Some churches are saying, well, we want to stay in there and try to help them change their policies. Ain't going to happen. No way on God's green earth that's going to happen. In fact, the homosexual activists are already putting pressure on the Boy Scouts to get male homosexual leaders in there. Caterpillar has pulled their funding from the Boy Scouts because they didn't go far enough to please them and their quest for sexual perversity. So here are 2 sound bites from my conversation today on Fox News Live with Lauren Green. Clip 1.
Brian Fisher is the Director of Issues Analysis with the American Family Association. He joins me now via Skype from Tupelo, Mississippi. Brian?
Hi, Lauren. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
You bet.
So why cut ties? What is the basic reason why you think the churches should be cutting ties with the Boy Scouts of America?
Well, the Boy Scouts for 103 years have stood for moral integrity. They stood for sexual integrity. They have made the best faith effort to protect the sexual integrity of the young boys that are under their care. And all of that's gone out the window now. If you put your son in the Boy Scouts of America, you simply have no guarantee that they're not going to be exposed to sexual risk. Boy Scouts have a policy now with this change that there will be nothing that will stop a 17-year-old active homosexual male from sleeping in the same tent with your 14-year-old son. If you had a 14-year-old daughter and you were told that she was going to go on a camping trip and be sleeping in the same tent with a 17-year-old boy, there's no way in the world you would put up with that. The risk is simply too great. But that's now the risk that the Boy Scouts are willing to take with our sons. It's inexcusable.
But wouldn't it be better to work within the Boy Scouts of America to make some sort of rules about that sort of thing? I mean, if a scout is going to be openly gay, then it's totally acceptable then to say, if you are a homosexual, then you should not be sleeping in the same tent as someone who is a heterosexual male. I mean, why wouldn't the better answer be working within the Boy Scouts to create parameters rather than jumping ship altogether?
Well, the reality is with the aggressive nature of homosexual activists, they are not simply going to be content with having homosexual scouts in the Boy Scouts of America. There have been a number of corporations like Caterpillar, for instance, that have already told the Boy Scouts they are going to withhold their corporate funding until the Boy Scouts allow adult male homosexuals to serve as scout leaders. And we know from peer-reviewed research that 1/3 of all sexual abuse of children occurs at the hands of homosexual males. So it opened the door to pedophilia. And again, that's simply a risk that parents should not take.
And here is the second clip from my interview with Lauren Green, Fox News Live.
I've got to bring in the Mormon Church, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Mormon Church has more Boy Scout troops, a greater association with the Boy Scouts of America than any church or denomination in the United States, I believe. And they are okay with this change. They have said that they actually agree that if this is going to be, that the way the Boy Scouts of America changed was correct. They like this change, that it's okay for openly gay scouts, but not troop leaders. What do you say to the Mormon Church?
Well, I think they're being very foolish. I think they're being naive. I lived in the state of Idaho for almost 30 years. One of the major scandals in scouting where older adult males were preying on scouts at ages 13, 14, and 15 took place in the state of Idaho in a Boy Scout troop that was sponsored by the Mormon Church. So it makes no sense to me that they would be so foolish now to plunge headlong into this policy change.
So that was my conversation with Lauren Green, Fox News Live today, about the Boy Scouts and what churches and parents ought to do. Well, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840, Free for All Friday. Let's grab one call before the break. Let's go to Luciano in Pennsylvania. Luciano, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Thank you for taking my call, Mr. Brian Fisher. I have a question for you and a comment. I'm a Latino. I've been a conservative Latino here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Excuse my voice. I'm walking a little bit.
That's all right.
I want to ask you this question. I'm sick and tired. I think this country is going down the drain. We are perverted, and this immigration policy, 1,000 pages, is going to destroy this country. My mother and father is Latino, and I tell Latinos I'm opposed to this government. I'm from Philadelphia, Washington. Just the illegals, they call me a traitor. I say I'm a conservative Christian. I don't identify as a Mexican. I identify as a Christian. Whatever color you are, brother, you're my brother. Not because you're Mexican, I'm supposed to support this 1,000-page immigration bill. And I want to ask you, what's the attitude of fight here?
Hey, Luciano, let me ask you a question. Can you hang on for 2 minutes?
Yes, sir.
I would like to continue my conversation with you. If you can find a place where we can get a good, clear signal. You were breaking up on us a little, and I want to be sure we hear everything you have to say. I'll be right back with Luciano. Stay with us. Focal Point, AFR Talk.